Hello everybody, we are now going to be doing some nice Cyber Monday sculpting for you. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be similar to the other streams I've been doing the last week now, where I'm going to be doing a creature. I'm going to be sculpting something like an orangutan, which is going to be really fun. So can't wait to properly get into that. I have some reference on my other monitor here that I'm going to try to I'll try to sculpt up. Whenever I start to sculpt, I always have a skull reference as well. I never try to sculpt anything like this without skull reference or bone reference, because the bones are really the foundation for everything. So that's where I'm coming from now. So I might do something different than just an orangutan, but that's gonna be my starting point at least. So yeah, we are gonna get started. I'm gonna be just giving people a second to join the stream, and then I'll be sculpting up our big dude. So cool. I'm gonna just get started now. So I'm gonna be sculpting ZBrush. I've been doing a bit of Nomad this last week as well, which is tons of fun. But it's back to ZBrush with me. When I'm sculpting like this, I always start from the front view, just making sure I'm oriented the right way, and then I'm gonna be using just straight up good old Dynamesh for this. I really like using this mat cap here, the Monster Clay one, and when I'm teaching in a almost academic session, then I'm really focused on the structure of things, like bone, muscle, fat, skin, really getting started with that. But when I'm doing this for my own sake, I just kind of get started with somewhere. Like, right, I don't really care too much about proportions and stuff matching fully and all that. I'm just gonna go for it, and then I basically kind of get in a lot of the proportions from using the mover brush later on. But I really try to just kind of get something up and running pretty fast. So this is where I do, of course, do bone, muscle, fat, skin, all that. But then I do this basically internally in my head, right? I do all this mentally. So this speeds things up so much. Because if you're going to start to do all of this, actually blocking this stuff out, it's just really slow. It's like in a language, if you're trying to learn Norwegian or Spanish or French or anything like that, and you need to sit down and actually do the grammatical structure of things, that's just going to take way too long. I mean, in the beginning, of course, you're going to have to, right? Because there's no way around that. But once you get more to a fluent or native state of that, there's no way you're going to do that. First, it's pointless because you don't need to. The sitting down and analyzing a sentence structure and all that is there to help you make sure everything's grammatically sound. But once you get to a level where you're at a good spot, you don't have to anymore. So this is the same thing with this as well when it comes to sculpting. It's where like I'm fluent in sculpting, if that makes sense. It's equivalent to being fluent at a language. Where what I mean by this is that if you're fluent in language, it means you can say whatever you want to say basically in the language. You don't really have to think too much about what it is you're trying to say. It just goes automatically from your thoughts to your mouth. It's the same thing when I'm sculpting now, where there isn't really a translation stage. I just look at the reference and I go, ah, cool, this is how I'm going to be doing it, without me having to really be analytical about things. But this is something that just comes with time. Don't rush into a stage like this, in the same way that if you're learning a language, don't rush into trying to get fluent. Fluency isn't something that you achieve as it's not something you can really strive towards as a goal by itself. It's the byproduct of just studying a lot. It's the same thing with sculpting, right? Of course, there are specific things you can keep in mind and all that, but really this is something that you just have to, it comes just by working out a lot. So specifically how I'm masking things out and all that, this is honestly completely irrelevant to the process. This is like, I have my own approach to this. If you ask 10 artists, they are going to have the same approach to things. Oftentimes as well, my approach is not particularly clever. My approach is just kind of brute force, and that works, works for me. It's oftentimes just trying to find the smartest solution just significantly slows you down. So, I tend to just find a few core techniques that work for 90% cases, and then when I do really need some really clever edge cases, or I meet some really interesting edge cases, then I'll try to find some clever techniques. I had this for the kaiju I was working on, if anyone has seen that. That's where the back spikes are really tricky to get right. They're just really, really hard because there are so many of them. You can, of course, just do them one by one. This is what I did when I did the first creature, like when I did it the first time before I recorded. But for the actual recording, like there's no way I can do a tutorial where I'm sitting down for like 20 hours and just sculpting that up. And that's where I had to invest quite a lot of time in trying to figure out a clever solution to that. But that's also fine, right? It is what it is. But what I'm doing now is basically just looking at my reference and just trying to just get some shapes in here. I don't really know where I'm going to be taking this guy, but yeah, I'll just have some fun with them. Hello there. Thanks a lot for your tutorials. Well, thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate that. This is also why I focus so much on human anatomy, because if you understand human anatomy, you can translate that so easily into so many other things. It's not a one-to-one thing, and you do have to translate it, but it's a lot easier than starting from scratch. So I really, really recommend that you spend proper time. Just you can't master human anatomy because that's really tricky, but you can get to a level where you get very, very comfortable with human anatomy. Because that means you can focus a lot more on the design challenges instead of focusing on just the core anatomy and all that of this character. Because, you know, anatomy is anatomy. It's a lot more important to get to a point where you can get the creature design right. What I'm trying here is I'm trying to make sure that the nose reads as a nose, and right now it almost something like this reads as a nose. Well, these are his eyes, so I'm going to try to make sure this actually reads. And that's going to read just fine in a bit, because I could do this as well. Right now it's going to read that this is the eyes, and here's the nose, and here's an even smaller nose. So this is one of those things that's just a bit tricky when it comes to character creature design. It's straight up just making it read. I think I'm going to do this with the mouth open, actually, which has some challenges. Like, for instance, I need teeth. It's not really a massive challenge, it's just a bit of an annoying one. One thing that's kind of interesting about creature design is that humans are pretty much, maybe there are some exceptions here, pretty much the only animal that have like large chins. Most animals, they just go backwards like this. You very rarely see animals with big chins. I'm sure there are some notable exceptions out there, but I can't think of anything right now apart from maybe like Maine Coon cats or something like that. So yeah, just playing around with the shapes here. But yeah, feel free to ask whatever questions you guys have. I'll do my best to answer them. Right now, I'm literally just experimenting with this. I don't know where I'll take him, so I'm not adding any additional pieces like the eyes and such. I'm just playing around with as much as I can with the core shapes here. You can see the back of the head is still a perfect sphere from where I started. Pretty much every single time I'm having major design issues, it is down to not getting the bones right in the right position. This is something I see with tons of my students as well. Whenever they have issues with anything to do with core sculpting, if the moment we start to fix the bone issues, meaning the bones are not in the right spot, then everything just gets a lot easier. So it's one of those that having the bones in the right spot is not gonna. It's not like that's going to automatically make your design amazing or something. But it's more if your bones are not in the right spot, then like it doesn't matter. Then it's never ever going to work, because then the whole thing is fundamentally flawed. So we're trying to build a building, trying to put a nice balcony on a building that doesn't have a good foundation. The whole thing is just going to fall down anyway. So it's just really important to keep that in mind. I'm going to be doing a smoothing pass here. When we're aiming for stylized stuff, is there something specifically that gets targeted like the jaw? Like from a lizard to a kaiju, what proportions do you usually keep, are usually the ones that get exaggerated? It's a really good question. That's a tricky one to answer, to be honest. The way I kind of figure these things out is I think about what makes something look most like what they are. So for instance, in this case here, what would make orangutan look really like what an orangutan is? It is this massive thing here. So it's not like I'm necessarily exaggerating it, but I'm really making sure this is a prominent feature. It also depends very much on what kind of animal you're doing as well, or what the creature is supposed to be like. Because if you're doing a good kaiju, meaning he's a hero of the story, you will probably exaggerate different features compared to if he's a bad kaiju. It's a great question, but unfortunately I can't really get too deep into it because it's such a broad one and so case by case basis. The more important thing though is what you're alluding to, is like what features are you exaggerating? Well, figure out what is your main reference first and foremost. If you have your main reference, then getting that right is turning a lizard into kaiju isn't that difficult, right? But if you're just trying to make a kaiju, that is difficult. But if you have a Komodo dragon and you want to turn it into a kaiju, there are plenty of ways you can do that. If you have an ape, you want to turn that into a kaiju, plenty of ways you can do that. If you have a dog, you can turn that into a kaiju. There are so many ways you can make that work. But the really important part is that you do have a core piece of reference, and you can have 10 designers who look at the same reference and they have 10 completely different versions of what that is like, but at least having the core animal reference is so important. There was a question on the Discord now, on Flipmoon's Discord, just like, I don't know, half an hour ago or something about dragon anatomy. Like, how do you figure out dragon anatomy? And that's really tricky because in this case, we're not talking about a wire, we're talking about an actual dragon, which would have 4 legs and 2 wings. And my response there is like what I wrote on Discord, but also in general to elaborate on that is you don't want to invent something new in terms of anatomy. Anatomy is a motion system. This means that anatomy is not here to look cool or anything like that. It's here fundamentally to move things around. It's why bodybuilders have big muscles and non-bodybuilders have small muscles. It's because they need to move bigger chunks of stuff around. It's why a giraffe has a longer neck, because they need to move up to grab the leaves in higher areas, or areas that other animals can't get to. It's why a cheetah is shaped the way it is shaped, so that it can move really, really fast. It's why a lion is shaped the way it's shaped, which is a mix between speed and power. It's all a motion system. So just for the love of everything that is holy, do not try to design your own motion system. That's a really core way to think about creature design. The moment you start to design your own motion systems, you're in for a world of pain, because motion systems are refined over millions and millions of years of evolution, and they're pretty much perfect, right, in terms of what they can do. Obviously, a cat and a dog and a mouse and a giraffe are very different, so they're not perfect. It's not like we have a universal motion system, but we have a system that works for like really, really well for the situations that you want them to work for. So if you're doing a dragon, for instance, figure out what kind of dragon is it like. Like if you're doing how to train dragon, you obviously have different kinds of dragons there. The main one is a cat. So if you want the dragon to behave more like a cat, well, you use the cat as a basis for that. You figure out you find some cool cat references. You find a cat skeleton, and then you build it from that. If you want to feel more like a heavy duty rhino, right? So it's a brute, but it can somehow fly. But maybe it's not amazing at flying. Maybe it's more like falling in style or something. Maybe the wings are just there to dampen the fall. Then you can use a rhino for that. If you want to be incredibly elegant, maybe you use a squirrel, like a flying squirrel as a reference for a dragon. So it's all about figuring out the motion system that you want to use as a basis and then using that. And the most fundamental part of the motion system would be the bones. That really, really, really is the most basic, like that's the atom level of the motion system. You can't really go deeper than that. I guess deeper would be what material are the bones made out of, but bones are bones. So we don't have to overthink it that much either. But figure out what bones does the character have and what's the relationship to the bones. For instance, how long are they? How thick are they? Because a bird, for instance, can have very different bones than again something like a rhino, right? Put rhino bones on a bird, even if it's proportional, it's not going to be able to fly because it's they're just too heavy. But at the same time, put bird bones on a rhino and it's not going to be able to work because they're too brittle. So our anatomy is fundamentally about motion, and everything else is very, very secondary. So figure out what is the motion you want to get, and then you go from there. Hello, I'm thinking of grabbing the FN brush kit as a stead sheet. What's the main difference between them and the default brushes? Could we get a 1 minute quick preview of them? Absolutely, we can. I don't think I actually have the, no, actually I have 2 of the brushes installed here. So let me show you these ones. So the main brush that I'm using this all the time. So this is the, it's called something different in the brush kit, but this is one of them. It's going to be called Build Up FN. So this is the one that I use all the time now. So this is the one that allows you to very quickly block out the volumes, like so. It has a really lovely texture to it, and it integrates really well, and it has this really nice directional feel to it. If you were to go to the build up like this, just by default, you can see how rough this is already. Sure, you can modify the alpha, but it's really rough. It's a bit uncomfortable to work with. You can set this to this alpha here, but even now you can see that it doesn't really blend that well. It's like a layer that you're adding on top of it. While the one I have here, it's like a half layer. It's like a way to really blend something nicely. For instance, you can have a shape that goes here, and then I can just blend this. I'm not using any smoothing or anything now. You can see how the shape just blends really nicely. You also get this really lovely directional feel to it, which I use a lot. So there's one brush. There's one I won't be able to demo now because I've been reinstalling ZBrush recently, so I don't have it. But we have this one, which is the tubes one. This is really nice because this gives you a lot of texture, but it also gives you a lot of planes as well. Compare this to the regular tubes brush, which is, where are we? Not the tubes brush, the clay tubes. There we go. This one has the same issue as the other one. It's just a bit too crude, right? It's really nice, but it's just a little bit too intense. So these brushes here, they're like $1, right? So it's not like it's the biggest investment if you don't really like them, but of course I want you to like them. But in this case here, you can see that they're just really nice for more subtlety yet specificity. So that's something I really recommend the brush kit here. It contains 3 brushes, and one is in between of these ones here. So let me find this one. Brush kit. So we do have our Cyber Monday sale now live as well. So I recommend you guys check this out if you're interested in some cool tutorials, some cool brushes, anything for ZBrush. Check that out. We have a lot of really cool tutorials now. I'm also working on one that's not on sale now, but that's the here we go. Here's the brush kit. And that's the kaiju tutorial. I think this site is under a lot of heavy load because of there's just a lot of traffic now. So I'll just send a link to this one here, and you can check it out on your own as well. Do you use a Cintiq or an Intuos? I use an Intuos for all my sculpting. I don't have a Cintiq. I had a Huion, which was a great tablet, but I found that it just took up a little bit too much space on my desk. I don't have a massive desk. I don't have too much. I live in London, right? I don't have too much space. So I had to be a bit conscious with that. And I didn't end up using my Huion enough for it to be worth it. Also, an issue I find with the display tablets is that they can be quite painful over time. Like now I can sit with basically a perfect posture. Not that I'm having perfect posture, but I could, right? I could have perfect posture, and then I can sit like that for hours. But if I'm sitting with a display tablet, then I have to lean over a lot, which causes issues. And because I'm sculpting way too much in my life, I have some issues with my wrists and all that. So it's one of the reasons I'm so careful with ergonomics. So I have a really good chair now that if I were to lose all my possessions, I would still rebuy that chair. It's a Herman Miller Aeron, if anyone's interested in that. Best investment I've made for my health, honestly. Fantastic. So I take that stuff really seriously. And I started seeing that I was getting some issues with my back from the display tablet. But the iPad is a bit different because it's much more ergonomic because I can move it around. Obviously I can't move a Cintiq or Huion around as much because it's much heavier. But an iPad I can be more flexible with that. I think the best thing in those brushes it forces me to refine the volume, and I like it. Yeah, that's the same thing here as well. Like I use this as I do end up removing all brush strokes at the end, because you gotta have to, because otherwise you end up with a lot of shapes that you aren't fully in control of. But then I tend to go over the whole thing afterwards. But like here, for instance, I want the directionality to be like this, and this really forces me to go in and just be very conscious of the directionality, like what I'm actually adding into my character. So I really like these brushes here. But yeah, they're $1, so nothing too crazy. If you absolutely hate them, then worst case you've lost $1. But yeah, I've replaced my. I've been using the clay build-up brush since it was released. I'm not sure how long that was. It must be over 10 years ago now. I've been using that basically daily. That's been my daily driver for absolutely everything. And then the moment I made my own brush, I replaced that within a few days. So that was pretty interesting, actually. Like I like to put my money where my mouth is here, and yeah, really like this brush. Do you have any courses for 3D printing models? I don't have any courses myself, but we definitely have some on Flipmomos as well. Give it a search for just 3D printing. We have some pretty nice ones on that. I got the Canvas 22 here on, and it's really darn nice. Yeah, that's the one I have as well. Mine is quite old now. I think mine is from 2019, 2020, and the color accuracy is terrible on it. But I'm fairly certain that's been fixed at this point. But that was definitely preventing me from doing any texturing or anything like that. It's a really nice one. If I had a bigger desk, then I probably would have had that still. But it ended up as my second monitor, and then I ended up not using it, and then I replaced my second monitor with something else. This comment here is regarding the anatomy explanation I had before. Oh wow, amazing explanation. Thank you so much. The rig nightmare. If I were to mix species, the best example would be like a toothless as a dragon behaves like a cat. Thank you. Yeah, that's really how anatomy kind of makes sense to me. Like the moment you think about anatomy not as a series of complicated bones and muscles and tendons and arteries and all that kind of stuff and organs, and instead just think about this as in a purely evolutionary terms. You want a species to survive. How do you do that? Well, it's got to move, right? That's the most core thing. If you can't move, you can't do anything else. And I like to go into first principles when it comes to things. Essentially, what is the most fundamental building block here? The fundamental building block is not the vastus lateralis or latissimus dorsi or the rear head of the deltoid. It's the range of motion, and it's the strength and the speed and agility of which a character can move. Can you repeat the chair you use? Yeah, I'll put it into the chat. It's called a Herman Miller Aeron. It's quite expensive, but you can often get it for half price, particularly refurb. I think mine was around £400, and I bought it years ago now, like 5 years ago, and it's basically as new. But that was as refurb, and yeah, I would rebuy that in a heartbeat. I used to have a lot of issues with my back, and it's pretty much solved those ones, combined with really good shoes as well, which really helped me. Looks like we have some slight issues with the website now because of traffic. Yeah, so good fun. I'm just gonna take a quick break, and looks like this is back now. I'm just gonna take a quick break, and I'll be back with you guys in a second. I'm just gonna leave this up like this. And hello friends, I am back. So we're going to continue our dude here. Oh, I often like to take a little bit of a break sometimes as well with just to get a fresh perspective of things, particularly with characters like this, because it's really easy to get just too stuck when it comes to your thinking and really just seeing the character in the wrong light. So I think it's really beneficial to just really just get some air sometimes as well. Yeah, Jude is saying I got one of those chairs on eBay and it's so nice. Yep. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, the Herman Miller chair is one of the chairs that a lot of companies buy for their employees. It's a very standard chair when it comes to office work, and a lot of companies go bust, and then those chairs go for cheap. So some companies just buy them up in massive bulk, and then they resell them as refurb. And often they really haven't been used a whole lot. I did this with my iPad actually. I bought a refurb iPad. Like when I got my iPad now, that was a refurb. And I don't see any reason not to get a refurb today. I'm fairly certain that the iPad wasn't actually a refurb. That it was actually just straight up brand new. Because when I checked it out, there were absolutely no marks on it whatsoever. The battery was 100% zero, what is it called, like cycle counts or whatever is on the battery. So in that case, I reckon it might have been straight up a company that bought a bunch of iPads as well. And that was like the M4, like the last gen version of it. Is there any type of student you wouldn't mentor? What should we think of as a mentee? I wouldn't take somebody on who was really sure that they already knew everything. That is really, really difficult to work with, because that means that if I were to be teaching something and I were to be talking about concepts of something and they think they already know something, either they're going to be fighting it, which is just really annoying, or they're going to be not really paying attention. Something that's really difficult when you're studying is that you genuinely don't know how everything connects. So sometimes if I'm teaching something, it might not seem like it's true, like the concept I'm talking about. It might seem that some stuff when you're learning or when you're teaching stuff, it sounds counterintuitive, and you don't understand how something connects up until you've actually gone a few steps ahead. Meaning that oftentimes you just have to trust the process. You just have to trust that if I'm teaching something, that this is probably more true than not. And it's not like I have all the answers. Of course I don't. But I've been around the block a few times. There's probably a reason I'm teaching something a certain way, right? And if students going like, yeah, I don't really know if this is it, man. I've heard somebody say differently. Okay, cool. Now you're just depriving yourself of learning. The ones who do the best as when it comes to mentorship are the ones who they just basically radically accept everything I'm saying. It won't be one of those that, not everything I say is going to be 100% true, because I make mistakes, but I try to verify everything I say at least. But the ones who just fully accept everything I say and all the teachings, they tend to improve significantly faster. And then of course they can fact check stuff, and they can work on they can kind of do fact checking around after the mentorship is done, just to make sure everything is all good, and they can do all that later on. But the moment they start to question things, then they start to be too apprehensive about. They start to become really apprehensive about actually learning what's useful. So the ones who do the best are the ones who just go like, "Yep," and they take it all in and they just accept everything. They tend to improve genuinely really, really fast. The ones who have no ego tend to just improve at astronomical rates. The ones who they don't think about their own work as being bad. They think about the work as being what it is, but they don't attach personal feelings to it. So if I were to give them feedback, they're not going like, Henning destroyed my work, that means that I'm bad. No, I just tore your work into pieces, which means we can now build it up from scratch again. So now we have a solid foundation to work from. It's not that the student isn't a bad person, even though their art isn't to the level they want it to be at. Like, those are very different things. The ones who just go, yep, and then they fix it, those are the ones who improve so fast, which is amazing to see. And the ones who really, really, really have a hard time are the ones who they really question stuff. But just don't question stuff in class, because you're just depriving yourself of learning. Most likely there is a reason you're in class, and that means that you're obviously you have less experience than the one who's actually teaching, right? Particularly with something that's as fundamental as what I tend to teach, which is a lot of character sculpting, anatomy, character design, all this kind of stuff, where it's not about a specific technique or something, it's about a way to think about something. And a lot of these things, they genuinely take time to absorb. You can't just go in and go, yeah, cool, got it. It's not like learning the extrude tool or how to UV map in Maya, which is something you can learn in, like UV mapping is something you can learn really fast, right? Retopology is something you can pick up fairly quickly. But when it comes to the core fundamentals of art, these are the kind of things that you will not get right away. For instance, one of the core fundamentals that I really try to get across is that the most fundamental part, the most atomic block of art, basically the foundational principle is, what do you want something to feel like? That is something that you will not get right away. What do you want something to feel like? Well, everything depends on that question. This is not something you can get and go like, yeah, all right, cool, I get it. Emotion is important. Because if that's somebody's response to it, that means that they didn't get it, because it is something that genuinely takes you have to basically rewire your brain in a way when it comes to that, in order to fully understand the impact of emotion in your art. And I don't mean that in like an art school bullshit way, right? You're sitting down and you're, all right, cool, it's all about emotion, then we are just going to get our emotion into the art. Nope, it's about figuring what you want the viewer to feel like, and when you look at your art, and then using that as a guiding principle more than anything else. So yeah, if you fully embrace that, then you're on a path where you can actually get really emotional art, and you can make something that connects with people. But if you go, cool, I want to just continue learning to sculpt awesome stuff, and you disregard that stuff, then you're just going to have a harder time. Everything's just going to be harder then. And I have no idea if this guy's going to turn out all right or not. He might not. And if he doesn't, that's also okay. Some days are amazing sculpting days, and some days are not amazing sculpting days. And today is a bit of an in-between. Could turn into either or. The way I think about sculpting is that I'm basically adding clay to it. So what I'm doing here, for instance, if I want to change the shape, I'm basically thinking about that I'm adding volume to things. It's like I'm adding a strip of clay onto the character. This really helps me to visualize basically the progress for it, because then you can kind of think about things. Are you adding or are you subtracting clay? One of the core ways I like to think about sculpting is we can divide it into two parts. One is we are adding or subtracting things, like I just mentioned now. You need to add or remove clay. And the other one is you need to refine what is already there, because you can't just keep adding and removing clay. You know, at some point you have to be like, oh, cool, we have all the elements here. Now we just have to make sure everything works together. Just going to try to refine this a little bit as well. So I'm just trying to get this in here to refine the anatomy a bit as well. But in most cases, refining anatomy simply means we're just working more in the bones, just really trying to get the bones more in a more of a correct spot. I mentioned this in another stream session the other day, that anatomy or the bone position really is the fundamental to everything. One thing that it's not obvious where that's the case is actually animation. where so much of animation is literally down to the correct placement of bone, either the position of them or their position in time, right? How they are in relation to each other. So much of animation is, when you're animating, is straight up about, you have a rig where you're controlling the bones of the character, right? Like if you were to look at rigs, in a large way, they are like, the rig is placement of bones. So then it's the position of them, like the rotation of the bones in relation to each other, and then where are they in time in relation to the previous timing, right? So either it's straight up position or it's timing, and that is literally down to the bones. When you're rigging something, a good rigger is going to be very anatomical, and it's going to be focusing very much on where the bones are in the character, right? Figuring out where, if I'm sculpting this, they're going to have to basically reverse engineer a bit what I'm doing and figuring out where's the skeleton. And then a good rig is going to be very respectful of that, while a bad rig is going to have wrong bone placements. It's not all about the bones, but it's more, if you don't get the bones right, the rest is going to fail as well. So just studying bones is really useful, but you've got to be contained here as well, because you can't just be focusing 100% on the 206 bones we have in our body, because then you're going to be too focused on the individual bones. What's more important is understanding the main, like a simplified version of them almost, because we obviously don't see the bones, right? Like it's not like you actually see the bones of characters, because there's bone, muscle, and skin on top, or there's fat, skin, and muscle on top of it, tons of stuff, fascia, and all that. So you don't see them. So it's much more important to understand the main volumes, understand the function of them, instead of going into being like, cool, now we're going to do the humors. Let's drill the humors until I understand every single notch of them. No, you can do that as well, of course, but it's much, much more important to understand, all right, cool, how does the humors attach to the body? All right, it actually attaches in the scapula. We can work with that. Understand, it attaches to the scapula. How does the scapula attach to the body? What can the scapula do? What other things attach to the scapula? The clavicles? I'll be damned, right? Everything connects to everything in many ways like that. But it's much more important to understand the relationship between things, instead of just drilling in every single tiny detail. I have a question. Assuming I've done sculpting from scratch, would it be valid workflow to split the mesh, for example, the arm, into multiple parts and attach each muscle separately? It depends what you're doing, right? A good way to sculpt is, maybe I can actually bring this up here. I might be able to show you this, because I'm doing the kaiju tutorial right now, and maybe I can show the first chapter of that one, because I'm kind of doing that there. I might just have dynameshed it together. ZBrush sculpting end. Let's see here. So this is the final thing. Okay, so this is kind of it, right? Like here I merged everything together, where, yeah, here you can actually see how I'm getting started. So this is in Blender. This comes from Blender. So so here, each polygroup that you're seeing here, if we just were to remove the line, each polygroup here is one piece that I've done in Blender, which means that this is one piece, and this is one piece. This is one piece. This is one. And each finger and each claw here, well, each finger is going to be one as well. So these are just individual pieces that have been done like that. Let's see if I can actually bring in the whole Blender thing as well. I'll just bring that in so I can show you what this actually looks like as well, because that's kind of interesting. I'll do so many chapters, like 80 or like 90 chapters at this point. A lot of chapters. Big course. Okay, Blender base mesh. Let me show you. So the way I like to do this is to do a very, very quick base mesh like this. So let's let this guy load for a bit here. Let's hope I don't screw anything up in the save either. But here I'm using a piece of concept art that I've already drawn. I've drawn this before, and this is based on the sculpt I did. So these are the pieces I have. And as you can see here, very, very, very simple stuff. This is literally exactly the same as what I have here, just that here I've refined it a little bit, right? But here what you can see, individual pieces. Right, like this, individual pieces. Why am I doing it like this? The reason I'm doing it like this is because it's very easy to modify this in ZBrush, because now I can really go in here in the on his jaw here, on top of his head, these pieces here, this, how they connect, the fingers connect to the hand, and I can really go in and I can make them look nice before I connect them. Again, here I have subdivided the whole thing and I have dynameshed it, but it really means that I can get good clean shapes. This guy here, this is after like half an hour, an hour of work or something like that. It's very, very early in the process. This here is basically exactly the same as the character that I've spent 40 hours on in the end. The difference is, of course, the one that I spent more time on is more refined. But in terms of the actual design, this is kind of it, because the shapes are so simple. What I'm doing here is I'm not doing it like this, because here I'm just having fun and sketching. But if I'm actually working on something where you have to refine the character, this is like really nailing that in design early. This is a fantastic way to do it, because it also means that at this point here, if you hadn't merged, then I was just dealing with this stuff here, and we have these pieces and they're nice and refined. This means you can push this to rigging, and they can already start to rig the character, which has two benefits. One is they can already start rigging, right? Because a lot of rigging is not down to pure weight painting and all that. It's down to the systems. They can get the joint placement right and all that. They can figure out different things, like in terms of their actual rig, like technicals, what they want to do. But also, you can start to test the design, which is fantastic, because at this point, you don't know if the design is going to work or not. Can he actually do what you want to do in terms of movement? Like, do you need more space here? Do you have to make the tail smaller? Do you need to make the neck longer? Like, you can actually already at this stage here do a quick rig. You can give this to an animator. The animator can give you feedback on the design. They can be like, if I were to actually make the head move forward a little bit, I can do significantly more with the neck. That's awesome. It means that it's a really fundamental approach to how you are character designing things. Of course, it's not going to look like the final thing at that point, because you have to of course add muscles and such and add details and everything. But at this point here, this is enough to test the design. And this is very, very, very early on. It also means that if everything is here you can see a bit of sculpting, right? It means that if everything is as a separate piece, you can very quickly iterate on the design. If I want to move the arm forward now, it's a bit annoying, right? Because everything is connected up. But if I want to move this arm here forward, easy peasy. You just move it around, right? You just straight up just move the whole thing. You just have to change some settings here, right? But you can very easily just move the whole thing. Aha. Move forward. So you can very easily check this out. Or check what works. So this is what you're suggesting here is basically one of my favorite ways to design something proper. Often I don't. And it's maybe more fun this way, because if you have to analyze everything, it becomes very analytical. And sometimes I just like to go for it. But it's still a fantastic way to, like in a production, it's a fantastic way to work, because you're working in a fairly non-destructive way, and in a way that is very easy for people for the next departments to truly get in and do their job really well. So much of character design is not about making something look cool. This is a rookie designer, is like a junior designer, somebody who's new to designing, is going to try to make something look cool. A senior designer is of course going to make it look cool as well, but is also going to make something look functional. This is absolute key to understanding, because you absolutely want stuff to be functional. If you have something that looks cool but it's not functional, at the very end, like at the core of that, you get bad acting, right? Like that's kind of one of the fundamental issues with that. Good acting is like good animation is good acting, right? Like that's what animation is like. It just makes a character behave in a certain way, and if you can't have good acting, you don't have a good character design. It would be like if you were to take an actor from a movie and put like massive pillows under their arms. Good luck trying to do some kind of romantic comedy if they can't move their arms down, or do whatever they need to do. So it's really, really, really important that we test this stuff out early on. The consequences are simply that people can't really relate as well to the character as they want to, and if they can't relate as well to the character, that means they're going to enjoy the performance less, they're going to enjoy the movie less. End of the day, the movie makes less money. Same with games as well. Like it's exactly the same process, right? Like you want to be able to relate to the character. For games, this is even more important, because for movies, you can cheat so many things. You can shot sculpt things. You can cheat so much based on shots. If you were to look at if you were to look at the hero camera, like the actual main camera for a movie, that it looks fine, and then you look at the side view, like you look at it from a different perspective, often it looks completely wrong. So for video games, that's even more important that the character design is functional, because it's going to have to do, it's going to have to work from at least all the angles that you can see the character from. In that case, you are controlling that in most cases, but also it's going to have to do a lot more things without cheats. Like the animation is going to have to just straight at work without cheating it based on a perspective. I hope that makes sense as well. Thank you. What I'm really referring to is using Boolean workflow to quickly build the correct shapes. Trying to create the right shapes with a clay builder feels really awkward to me. In that case, I recommend that you just need more practice. You just need more mileage. If you're creating like hard surface things, don't use the clay builder for that. But if you're trying to create a character like this, it's one of those you kind of just have to suck it up, to be honest, where it sucks to do, but you just have to just sculpt more. If you're trying to kind of cheat your way out of this, yeah, it just means you just don't have enough experience with that, which is, fine. It is what it is. Everyone starts that way, but that's just, you just need more mileage. You just need to get more comfortable with tools, because for creating organic characters, the correct tool set is just like clay brushes, right? In 90% of all cases, you don't want to do any kind of hacks or anything like that, or trying to avoid it. You just want to address that heads on, that in this case, you're just not as comfortable with sculpting as you would like to be. How do you get more comfortable? Just sculpt a lot, right? Simple. It's not easy, but the solution is kind of simple. It means you'll start to be able to play with characters or play with designs and all that. But it's difficult for a bunch of different reasons, but there are two main ones, right? One is that you need to get comfortable with anatomy and design and all that kind of stuff. But the other one is just a pure medium, which is difficult to get into. You have to get comfortable with the tablet. You have to get comfortable with the brushes. You have to just be able to sculpt well. The way I think about sculpting well is basically as handwriting. This is something I often work with my teeth on when it comes to it, where it's like if you want to write a letter to somebody and your handwriting is uncontrollable, let's say you're trying to write something as simple, right? You're trying to write like hey, and simple enough, right? It's very descriptive. It's not particularly beautiful. You can write this in so many different ways as well. That's more appealing, or you can write stuff in different ways that are maybe faster, right? There's so many ways to do this, but the problem is, like, these are different art styles almost, right? Like one is more flowy, one is a bit more to the point, one is very easy to read. Perfectly valid. You can also change this up and all that, right? So you can do this, but regardless, these are all legible. The problem is when people are writing and like this is what you're trying to write, or like this spells hey, but the writing itself is so. It's ugly or pretty. It's just illegible. So you can't actually read what it says. This is where, for me, this is about describing shape. This is about sculpting technique, where at this point, if this is the issue you're having, it's not about the grammar of the language. It's not about you understanding the language you're writing. It's not about vocab. This is like a meta game almost, where it's literally about the processing of information. It's just about what we're trying to get right here. Like, if you can't get nice appealing shapes, it doesn't matter what tools you're using. It doesn't matter how you're thinking about something. None of that matters unless you can manipulate the data correctly. So in this case here, this is about creating appealing shapes. What I would do as an exercise, this is something if we're focusing on momentous on this, is we start with a sphere, subdivide it up, Control D a few times, get it up to like, I don't know, 500,000, a mil, whatever. It doesn't really matter too much. Just try to sculpt something here that makes where you control things. So you're not trying to sculpt anything specifically. You're just practicing your handwriting. So one exercise here can, for instance, be you have this shape here, blend it. Try to blend it. You're not allowed to use a smooth brush. In this case here, you have to blend it using just sculpting, proper sculpting. So what I'm doing here is I'm just using my brush to create this like ramp, and just slowly, using less pressure, trying to blend this in. Same thing here, trying to blend it in. You can hold on the Alt key, make it go inwards, trying to blend it in a bunch of different ways. And just trying to really control the shapes. This is one of the core ways I got a lot better at sculpting, because my sculpting technique is sound. This means that I can sculpt, quote unquote, anything. It doesn't mean that it's going to look good, because it means that I need reference for different things, right? But it means my sculpting technique is fine. In the same way that I can, with my handwriting, if I'm writing a letter on paper using ink, I can write anything. I can write in French. I don't speak French, but I can write it perfectly as long as I have reference for it, right? I can transcribe French. I can copy a French letter perfectly because my handwriting is good. I have no idea what it says, right? But I can write it. And it's the same way here that I can sculpt anything in 3D. I might not know what I'm actually sculpting, meaning I might not understand the anatomy of which I'm sculpting. If I'm trying to sculpt a crab, I don't know what crab anatomy is like. But because my handwriting is sound, I can copy the shapes I'm seeing, and this way I can do this. This will be the same like observational shapes. Observation is such an important thing that I can copy like Cyrillic, right? I can copy something in Bulgarian, even though I do not speak the language. But you know, if your observational skills are good enough, you can copy anything, even though you don't fully understand it. That's one of my goals when it comes to sculpt, that you should be able to copy anything. You should be able to recreate anything without fully understanding it, because your handwriting is strong, like sculpt technique is strong, and also because you have a good sense of observation. So if you can sculpt something that looks appealing just on a sphere like this, good. Then you're in a good spot. If you can't do that, then you're in a bit of trouble, because that means that you can't. If you can't sculpt something nice on a sphere, that means you can't sculpt something nice when you have a complicated shape like this to create as well. I hope that makes sense. What I'll do now is smoothing time. Getting rid of all my nice brush strokes. But notice when I'm smoothing, I'm not nuking the model. I'm just softening it, right? Like that's what the smooth brush is doing. The smooth brush used well and carefully is going to unify all the shapes. Which pen tablet do you have for sculpting? I'm not actually entirely sure. I bought this in 2017, and after one other one broke that I had for years, so I went into the tablet store and I bought one of their Intuitus. Whatever you have is fine, to be honest. They're going to last for ages, so any Wacom Intuos is fine. But now since I bought it as well, there's also been a lot more competition on the market. Like Huion is actually a viable competitor. Like mine is like 8 years old now, right? So I wouldn't take recommendations from somebody who hasn't been up to date for 8 years. But XP Pen, they have a lot of good ones now. Like there was just a lot more competition on this one. But if I had to get a new tablet now, I would have probably just gone with Wacom as well. Wacom is consistently a really solid brand for tablets, and they're not particularly overpriced either. I'm sure there are a lot of good ones on Black Friday now as well. Like for when it comes to my tablet, I really wouldn't care about getting a good deal on it, to be honest, in terms of trying to get a cheaper model. That's might be worse, but it is cheaper because this is something I use. This is my bread and butter. It's like a hammer for a carpenter, right? Like it's what you use all day, every single day. It's much more important to me that the quality is 100% than trying to get something cheaper. And Wacom is just rock solid at this stuff here. My pen broke recently, like it was been lost for 7 years and 8 years, whatever it was, and I bought a new one, and now it's as good as new. So that was pretty cool. I was able to I didn't have to buy a new tablet because it's a new pen fixed all my issues. The tablet is practically good as new. I have no issues with that whatsoever. It was one of those, my tablet broke, and I needed a new one, so I just went into the store during lunchtime and I got it right away, because it's one of those, if I don't have a tablet, then I'm really struggling in terms of what it can do, right? So it's one of the most important things and one of the most important devices I own, along with a chair, like I was speaking about earlier as well. I think I need to add some teeth to this guy at some point, but I hate doing teeth, so I'll see if I have a tooth model somewhere. This is one of those that's just a bit annoying to deal with, so if I can just get some teeth, that's ideal. Let's see this one here. Hey, nope. This is a model I made ages ago, so I'm gonna find another one. I'm just searching for teeth through my hard drive. I have a lot of teeth. Maybe I have some here actually. Let's see. I might have some other tools. Alas, I do not. Oh, it's trying to open in Modo. I haven't used Modo in ages now. Oh, here we go. We do have some teeth. That's pretty cool. These are here somewhere. I'll just export these guys out. This is like Modo 901. Ages. I've been using this in absolutely ages. I'll just put these somewhere. I really like Modo. Modo is such a fantastic piece of software. And now it's dead. Good times. That's the thing that sucks with 3D sometimes. You really fall in love with a tool and then suddenly it's just gone. So hey, there we go. Cool. Now we have this one. Copy paste this onto my little guy. That's something that it's such a crazy thing, like how many tools I've actually used when it comes to 3D. It's absolutely mad. It's too many. Let's see here. These are of course human teeth, so I'm gonna have to modify them a bit to make them fit. But I'm not gonna spend time on building this from scratch. It just takes time. And now I'm just designing, so I truly don't care about this being done from scratch in that sense. I just want a cool design. Here's a good question. I like to sculpt monsters at a high detail and often run out of geometry to sculpt those shapes. It lags a lot. I find that you don't really want to go over something like 50 million polys in ZBrush, any more than 50 million, like 50, and stuff starts to get very annoying. So, but for 50, you should really have enough. The tip I have is to do stuff in texturing instead. Like really try to embrace doing high frequency details in texturing. That way you can get significantly higher in terms of the detail level compared to if you're doing stuff in sculpting. Sculpting is really not ideal for high poly counts. It's not just the poly count itself, it's how difficult it gets to work with things, because you just need, like, doing anything with a high poly count is just very, very, very annoying. ZBrush doesn't behave particularly well. Everything just is tricky. So like saving, loading stuff is annoying. So I tend to keep my poly count as low as I can. But yeah, I don't really have any way to optimize performance. ZBrush is just kind of what it is. There really isn't like a magic setting here or anything like that. What poly counts are you getting to? Like at what level does it start to get annoying? Because that impacts stuff quite a lot. But yeah, really it's more of a fundamental approach to things, which is do stuff in texturing instead of doing it in modeling. Just going to scale these guys up. This is one thing that's really annoying, that if you're dealing with symmetry in ZBrush, that it scales from the center of the model instead of the center of the masked part, right, or unmasked part, which is just one of those awkward things. But that is what it is. Yeah, it's so much faster if you have a pre-made model like this for teeth. This is a model I made years and years ago. I don't know, like well over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago or something like that. Like this is, I think, before I went to university. I find that 20-30 mil is actually plenty for most characters, because it's at that point you're really starting to get into areas where you should be doing the work in texturing instead. If you have a model that's 20-30 mil and then you have like 10 UDIMs or something on it, you can get really far when it comes to you just how far you can take stuff in texturing. Like all the high frequencies should really ideally be done in texturing. It's not just from a polygon point of view that you should do stuff in texturing. It's also like a lot of stuff is just easier to do in texturing because you can use proper tilables, and you have so much more control than you would ever have in ZBrush. Sure, you can use tilables in ZBrush using like Noisemaker and such, but it's not good, right? Like you just don't have the same level of control as you do in Paint or Mari. Because in Paint or Mari, what you can do is you can really mask things out, you can reuse things, and it's completely non-destructive. It's just a much better way of doing it than dealing with the annoyances of Noisemaker and such. But yeah, computers are pretty priced at the moment. Good times. The RAM apparently is exploding in price now. Thank you, data centers. Thank you. Cool, so now we have some teeth we can work with. I'm going to try to make his gums quite apparent. I really like that as a design element. Yeah, it's interesting with Wacom, how the thought of upgrading a Wacom is so foreign to me. Like, what would I be upgrading to? Because it doesn't actually have any new features, right? It can't do anything else for me. One thing I did actually like with the Apple Pencil, I have the Apple Pencil Pro on my iPad, is that you can squeeze it, which I'm not even sure that there was any benefit to that on PC if you even could, but on the iPad you can use that, you can map that to something else. So of course you have a lot less, you don't really have a keyboard on the iPad, so of course you can, but I don't. So it means I can map that to different things like sculpt in and out. So it means I don't have to use the interface for that. I can just squeeze and then it squeezes in and out. But of course on PC that's completely pointless because everything is using a keyboard. It's not like I'm going to be gestural for that. I really hate touchscreen PCs with a burning passion. Hey guys, I bought an iPad this weekend to start Sculpt the Nomad. Really excited to start the Nomad sketch on my couch. Yeah, awesome. I'm happy to hear that. I'm probably going to be making a few Nomad videos. The one we did last week did really well. It was really fun to see. I just hit 200 comments, which is really nice. I tried to get back to people, but my God, there were a lot of comments there. But so that's really fun. I read a lot of them though, and probably going to do a lot more of that. One video I have in mind is I know a lot of people in the Nomad community are more fresh to sculpting, while some of our ZBrush users are in our community are more experienced. I'm thinking of essentially doing like here's an hour of sculpting. Here are my tips, right? In no specific order. Here are just a lot of tips for sculpting. Like this is appeal, this is gesture. Here are how we get nice sculpting tips. Basically, a lot of sculpting tips in one video. I think that could be a lot of fun to do. The good thing about Nomad as well is since it does have the desktop version of it, it means it's a lot easier for me to record tutorials. Because of course I could record on the iPad, but it's just technically harder. It's also harder. I don't have the aspect ratio as well, but also I can't do stuff like this, right? I can't draw on top of it with Epic Pen, and that's something that obviously has a clear benefit to doing this. It's a clear benefit to be able to draw on top when you're teaching, and then I don't have to edit on top afterwards. So it's just a lot quicker to actually get stuff out because of that. So I'm probably going to be doing a fair few Nomad videos. But they wouldn't be technical Nomad videos necessarily, like, oh, this is how we use all the features, because that already exists. Where I think would be really useful is a lot of sculpting videos, like just going into the theory of things, going into how to sculpt something that looks nice. What I saw when we started with Blender, this is years ago now, right, 2019, but what we saw there was that it was a very different environment for tutorials than it was in Maya and ZBrush that has a professional community. And the difference was that there were a lot of tutorials that were really good on using all the features in Blender, but there were a lot of them were wrong, like straight up wrong in terms of conventions, in terms of workflow and such, in terms of professional workflow. So we tried to get in there and being like, yeah, this is all cool, but here are some good tips and tricks on how to actually use Blender in a more collaborative environment, like in a more professional environment. And I see a bit of the same thing in Nomad as well. A lot of videos talking about all the features and all that, but not a whole lot that focus on more of a holistic view on sculpting. Basically what I'm doing now, like how do you sculpt some of this? Like what are some pros and cons of subdivisions using Dynatype versus like the voxel feature? Like what are some different workflows? What am I thinking about when I'm sculpting this kind of stuff? How important are bones? What's anatomy, right? All these kind of things. So I think that could be really cool. So I'm pretty eager to get into something like that. Would you use Nomad to start something professional, then take it to ZBrush? I would say that currently I would be sculpting on the couch using the iPad version of that to find an idea. I'm definitely better at sculpting on the iPad than I am here. Like actually the sculpting feel is better because like even ZBrush, because I'm sculpting directly on a screen, and here I'm sculpting with a pen tablet. So sculpting on the iPad on the screen there is fantastic. So it means I can play around with the design more. I'm more accurate and faster. And so I would do that there. And then I would take it into ZBrush on desktop to really refine things where I can control things more. And of course I have more tools. I have a higher poly count and all that. And of course I have Blender and other tools to help me create other pieces too. I would say that I wouldn't be doing concepting in the desktop version of Nomad, because if I'm on desktop, I'm going to be using the best tool that's out there, and that is for sure ZBrush. Right? Like there's nothing else that compares to ZBrush for pure sculpting. But for concepting on the couch, it's fantastic to use Nomad. I could of course use ZBrush as well on the iPad, but it's fun to play around with things. I think the desktop version for ZBrush is significantly further ahead than the desktop version of Nomad, but I think the iPad versions are very comparable. Gorilla, nope, it's an orangutan. Ish. That's what I'm basing it off, at least. So I'm sculpting this for, what are we now? About an hour and 10 minutes, which also means it's time for a little Cyber Monday talk. So we have our Cyber Monday tutorial sale. Well, not tutorial sale, it's our Cyber Monday sale that's ongoing now. And we have tons and tons and tons of products on sale. Here's one that I really like. There are actually two courses here that are fantastic. One is made by myself, which is Intro to Anatomy. I talk a lot about anatomy. Anatomy is important to get right. And this is a course where I'm basically teaching people everything I know about anatomy and really doing a mix between really technical anatomy, which you have to understand, and more looser concepts that are very applicable. So I highly recommend Intro to Anatomy to people who are really interested in, anatomy, right? People who want to get an introduction to anatomy. And then we have this one by Nico. This was actually in one of our flip boxes recently as well, which this is about sculpting the head. Learn how to do the head. This is 30% off. Ours is 50% off. So I highly recommend like speed chart. Nico is absolutely a beast when it comes to sculpting. Like, check this out. Beyond crazy stuff. He has so much cool stuff when it comes to Blender, ZBrush, all sorts of stuff. Really, really, really good. Good courses. So yeah, check out our Black Friday / Cyber Monday sale. On that, I'll go back to sculpting my monkey guy here. This is actually a really good question. Hi, how would you approach recreating somebody's face? I made dozens of faces, both good and bad, but recreating a specific person's face is always super difficult. This is activating a rant in me. The rant is why we do not do celebrity likeness ever, because that is crazy stuff to do. It's one of those things that sounds medium difficult, but it's actually exceptionally hard to do. And a celebrity sculpt is a bit different than sculpting yourself, for instance, but at the very core, a bit of a lecture here. The very core, there are two main things you need to sculpt somebody, like to sculpt them to look right. The first is you need anatomy. This is something that you just straight up need. And then you need specific references. This is what I call this design. I talked about this a bit before when it comes to creatures. It's the same thing for sculpting this guy here as it is for sculpting Angelina Jolie. So the first thing is anatomy. No matter who it is you're sculpting, you need the core anatomy to be right. This is where you get the bones right. You need the skull. And this is one of the tricky things, is that people rush directly into getting the likeness right. They're like, all right, Angelina Jolie, big lips, so we're getting the lips right. But without thinking about the teeth, because of course teeth are underneath the lips. So if you don't get the teeth right, you don't have to sculpt every single one. But if you don't get the volume of the teeth right, this is all wrong. If you were to get her lips right or her nose right, it's all wrong unless you get, the bony part here right. If you want to get the eyes right, well, it doesn't matter if you get the specific eyes right unless you get the bony landmarks right around the eyes, because then they're going to be in the wrong spot. So you have to get the skeleton right first. And this is what a lot of people miss. But then you have the second piece here, which is under design. This is reference. A big issue people are having when it comes to trying to sculpt the likeness is literally just down to reference. If you were to have a scan of somebody, recreating that is like medium difficult. But the problem is, if you're sculpting somebody from, like, you're trying to recreate a celebrity sculpt or anything like that, the reference you have it's not just bad, it's beyond garbage. Like it's so bad that it's actually poisoning your reference pool. Because let's say you're sculpting Angelina Jolie. She's been active in the film industry for 30 years or something. That means you're going to find pictures of her. You're going to find images of her or whoever it is you're sculpting from the mid 90s until today. That means that somebody's going from being early 20s to being in their 50s. You get all that range, and you might not even know what age they're at. It can be difficult to see if somebody is 19 or 23 or 23 or 33, right? Stuff can be really hard. So people look different because they are different ages. People look different because every single one of those reference images are shot with a different camera. Every single one of those images are different because they are shot under different lighting. They're different because people are different. People are different at different ages, but also people are different. Maybe she had a massive meal, right? She's bloated. Maybe she's had a hard time. She hasn't eaten for a while, right? People just change. And the problem is you're now trying to match reference images that are completely different, even though, sure, it looks like her, but we don't want something that looks like her. We want something that looks exactly like her in every single photo. So now you're starting to line things up and nothing matches. And now you get frustrated and you're wondering, why doesn't this work out? And it's because your references are terrible. So the best reference you can get is of a lot of pictures of the same person at the exact same time. This is what happens when you do a photo scan. This is where you have maybe 100 pictures of one person at the exact same time. If these photos were to be taken at the exact same time, but with different cameras, let's say they were going onto a catwalk and they're all different cameras, different lenses, these can look different. The lighting is going to be different angles. This stuff is really difficult. The worst reference you can have is a lot of images that are contradictory to each other. So this is hard stuff. Doing somebody something that looks like somebody is really, really hard. So let's say you were to have perfect references of them. You have like that's sorted. You have a scan of them and all that. You have the whole issue that you need to be really good at sculpting at the same time. This stuff is so hard to get right. It's so hard to get right. This is why I strongly advise against having any kind of celebrity likeness in a portfolio. It's also the problem that everyone knows what people look like, right? Everyone like if you have those A-listers, people know what those A-listers look like. And if you mess that up just a smidge, it's all wrong. But also because they know what they look like, and you're not going to get them right because you don't have all the accessories. Like let's say you don't get your teeth right, then they're going to look off. So you're sculpting them without teeth, without hair, without skin, without makeup, without anything on that. How can you expect that to look good? Right? Like it's all over the place. Or you get all that perfectly, but you don't get their facial expression right. Well, it's not going to look like them, right? So what I recommend to do if you want to get like a digital, right, like a digital version of somebody in your portfolio, I recommend that you straight up do somebody like either yourself or somebody who's close to you, and you do a photo scanning session where you take references yourself. First off, nobody knows what they look like, not intuitively, right? Not like like what an A-lister looks like, and also because you can really match things. You control the camera used, you control the lens, you control the distortion, you control the lighting, you control everything around them. It's fundamentally a controlled shoot, and all the references are taken at the same time. And hell, if you don't have enough reference, you can always ask that person again. So that's what I would do if I were to be doing that. This is a long way to say that it's really, really hard to do specific portraits of people because it's really hard. Every single thing is against you. Hey Henning, I hope you're doing well. I have a question about Mari. Do you recommend using the non-commercial Mari? It's just 6 UDIMs and 4K support. Yeah, that's a really good way to get started on Mari. Honestly, like 6 UDIMs and 4K, that's quite a lot, right? That's quite a lot of resolution. I think what's important to think about when it comes to resolution of things is that a 4K map is equivalent to 4 2K maps, right? So if we were to think about how many 2K maps that is, it's quite a lot of 2K maps. So it means that, what is that, like 24 2K maps? Like it's actually a lot of resolution that you have even in non-commercial Mari. So I would say go for it. I don't think there's any, unless you're a studio, I don't think there's any point in paying for Mari because the non-commercial version is great. And also, like Mari is expensive. So yeah, Mari is great software. The non-commercial version is fantastic. It's one of the non-commercial version of Mari is one of the best non-commercial versions out there because there's no time limit or anything like that, and the feature limitation is actually quite generous as well. So yeah, I really recommend the non-commercial version of Mari. Just work around the restrictions. If you need more UDIMs than that, like let's say you have different objects, just use a different archive for it, right? Keep it simple. And also when I go on my long monologues, I'm not checking the chat. So if I'm missing something here, just send the question again. I'm gonna make this tooth here a bit sharper so we can smooth it out a bit, and we can use the move to logical. Thank you for your input. I was losing my mind over not being able to recreate Walter White in ZBrush. Yeah, it's so difficult. But it's not just difficult. It's not fun. Like it's work where you're just sitting and you're just doing tiny changes over and over and over again, and it never looks right. I don't think there's any point in doing that. And even also in studios as well, if you were to be doing digital doubles like that, they would probably have a scan of the person as well. Like it's one of those, particularly VFX, if you were to be having Bryan Cranston in for a movie, they're not going to be sitting with Breaking Bad and they're going to taking screenshots of that, right? Like also because that's also, right, like almost 20 years old at this point, so he's much older today. They would be going in and taking a photo shooting session of him, or a scanning session, which will be photo scanned, and they would get a perfect scan of him. right? Like I think doing celebrity portrait, unless this is something you really like to do, of course, then go for it. I think this is not a good utilization of anyone's time, because it's just playing it on. It's not just hard mode. It's playing it on a mode that's almost like it's like pointless mode, right? Like it's just, I just don't see the benefit of doing that unless you do it extremely well. Like either you don't do it or you nail it. Like anything in between is going to look really odd. So, do something else. Do something that you actually find to be fun. And man, celebrity portraits are not fun. They're just painful. I have a lot of students who want to do celebrity portraits because also they're cool, right? You're seeing some crazy genius online who's like Vimal, who was able to just whip that stuff out. It's crazy impressive. But man, that stuff is just difficult. The way I see it is that the payoff isn't particularly high. The risk is really high, because if you try to do this for a portfolio piece and you mess it up, it's going to look really odd. And it's going to look like you didn't really make it. It's going to look like somebody, like you don't really know what you're doing, because it doesn't really look like Walter White. So just do somebody else. Do somebody else who's not a perfect likeness of somebody. Maybe somebody will vehemently disagree with me on this, but I'll fight you on that. I'm prepared. Not a technical question. Can a 36-year-old who's just starting out in game art environment still enter a job in industry? Yeah. Straight up, yeah, absolutely can. This is an industry that's not really... It doesn't really require degrees. It requires skills. So if you have the skills to pull it off, and that's 100% viable at that age, like it's just one of those, you just have to dedicate time to that. 100% possible. I've seen this happen before. It's not like you need to be 21 years old and go to uni for this. 100% doable. Yeah, question about the non-commercial version of Mari. Mari is one of those software that is just really feature rich, but it might almost look a bit simple in many ways. I was talking to some students some years ago now who they were talking about like ZBrush and Mari, and there was another teacher there as well who were teaching Mari, and the students were like, when are you going to teach us a real version of the software? Like, you're teaching us like, Mari and ZBrush. When are you going to teach us like the production software? And we're like, we have. This is it, right? Like Mari is just Mari, ZBrush is just ZBrush. The version of ZBrush I'm using now is practically the same version it's exactly the same version as somebody will be using in production. You can't really customize this. In terms of Mari, they would be having the extension pack, and there would be some pipeline tools, maybe. But really, Mari is Mari. Non-commercial version of Mari is basically the same. I don't think you can get the extension pack for that, but honestly, it's totally fine. So the versions of software we have is the same version that professionals would have access to. I think this is something that's really important to understand, because otherwise you're going to be like, oh, well, they've obviously made Avatar with different tools than what I have. Nope. Same version of the tools. The reason that looks better than what you can do is because they have a lot more time, but they have a lot more experience as well. And that's basically it. The moment that's accepted as basically a truth, then starts to change, because then the excuses kind of disappear. It's not because they have a better plugin or a better render engine or anything like that. It's just more experience, just more time, more resources, right? It's not down to better software. The fact that consumers today have access to enterprise level tools like what I'm mentioning here, like ZBrush and Mari and Painter and such, is actually insane. The caveats would be that of course they have different tools in terms of pipeline, but those tools are there because of the scale they're doing, not because of the quality of the shots. The reason they will be using like custom versions of like Katana, you can't really get to Katana as a regular user. Maybe you can get your hands on it, right? But it's not going to be a pleasant experience at home. There's no purpose in doing that. And Houdini as well, they definitely would have custom pipeline versions of that. But the reason is not because their shots are going to look better, it's because they have a lot of shots and they have to reuse things, and they have to be on top of everything. All assets will have to be published so that it's easy to be picked up and such. There is no reason at all why you should ever have to build something like that at home. But the tools themselves are the same tools as what's being used in production. The version of Arnold that you have in Maya, pretty much the same version of Arnold as you have in production as well, right? Like it's Arnold. There could be some custom nodes here and there, of course, but the custom nodes are not there because it makes Arnold better. It gives you more control. The lighting tools are just fundamentally the same. Studios are not sitting on some magic version, some magic beans that makes their stuff look better. They just have more time and more resources. And obviously, they're much more experienced than individuals will be as well. And also, there are a lot of people working on it, right? Like, they're collaborative projects. That was one of the almost depressing things I had when I was working in the industry. Like, I worked on really high-level creatures, and I wanted to do that stuff at home as well. But I just knew there was no way I could do it to the same quality because of the time I spent on the creatures at my job. And there's just no way I can get close to that, like, ever. Like how can I recreate a creature at home that took me 6 months to do professionally, right? Like, that would be years of my work, of my life at home. And you know, I'd rather do something else than that. You're sculpting from reference, am I right? Yep. Yeah, I mean, like, there's no way I'm going to know what stuff like this looks like without reference. I just have it on my second monitor here, which is also something, if you don't have a second monitor, get that ASAP. So yeah, I mean, like, I'm not freestyling this stuff here. If I'm sculpting something specific, I always gather reference. I just went to Pinterest right before I started recording and just be like, yeah, that looks cool. I didn't really know what I was going to sculpt. Found a cool sculpt of an orangutan, and I was like, that's it. And that's the end of that story. That's often how I do it. Be like, I like this. Cool. Let's sculpt it. Doesn't have to be fancier than that. I think I'm going to give this guy some eyeballs as well. I should really make some, like, pre-make some eyeballs. Just spend a lot of time with some good eyeballs, throw them in here so I don't have to redo this every time. Not that this takes too much time, but anything that slows me down is annoying, right? Anything that kind of causes friction is just annoying to deal with. Would you have any tips towards edits to make the brushes in Blender better? Not really, to be honest. I'm not a huge Blender guy when it comes to sculpting. Like, I can use it for sculpting, but I don't think it's a particularly good sculpting software. I would find other things if I was doing a lot of sculpting on PC, like even just Nomad for desktop, honestly. It definitely can do the job, but there are so many annoyances there. So yeah, I find the brush system in Blender quite clunky, to be honest, and how you edit things as well. I was able to, within like a few hours of using Nomad, to make some really nice custom brushes, and with the in Blender, I always have a hard time with that. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't really have any magical tips for that. I mean, I'm sure there are some good ways to do it right. It's just not my cup of tea. Kind of like this guy. Nothing too fancy, but I do kind of like him. Crazy animals, these ones. I really like weird looking animals. They're so much fun to sculpt. Just gonna play around with this, playing around with the shape a little bit here. This is what I often do because I know I get blind to things quite fast. Just a human thing, right? Like sculpting is just real difficult, and designing something is difficult, and I'm kind of designing something now. So just being aware of that and just working with that in mind is really beneficial. Specifically what this means is that I tend to take breaks when I'm sculpting, and I tend to, not now of course, right, because we need to continue, but I tend to take breaks, I tend to go for walks, and I tend to just get fresh perspectives on what I'm doing. And then just moving things around like this, just playing around with things, seeing what works, getting a fresh look of what something is supposed to be like. Trying to get like a nice rhythm going here, trying to get a nice curvature here going. So it's a bit difficult to get right, but that is just something I will have to suffer through. A nice monk. He's starting to get there. I'm going to experiment with this as well, seeing if I can just fill this in. This is not entirely what they actually look like based on reference, but you know, I can do what I want to. Do you hear music while creating stuff? Just curious. I actually have music on right now. I have my AirPods on right now. I'm listening to lo-fi music because it's just a lot easier. It kind of like soothes me a little bit when I'm sculpting as well and talking. Just makes this a little bit easier. I nearly always listen to music when I'm working. Like now I'm listening just to lo-fi because I need something that's just incredibly non-offensive. But when I'm sculpting, when I'm sculpting and just doing regular work, I often listen to. I have some good headphones and I just listen to nice music. I'm in my Beatles phase right now, so I'm going through all the Beatles albums, which is really nice. A lot of good stuff there. Listen to Abbey Road on repeat. But yeah, music is definitely something I listen to a lot. I really like listening to music. I know some people don't do that. And if I'm properly designing something, I don't. Because it's just too hard. I need just to concentrate properly then. But if I'm doing something that's more routine, just rocking to a lot of good stuff. Can you talk about practice drills for a bit, please? About to start doing loads as I just finished Game Dev Blender course. Also have your sculpting courses. Cool. Yeah, so practice drills. Depends what you want to do, right? If you wanna get better at sculpting, I think it's not just about doing a lot of sculpting. That's a prerequisite. You need to do a lot of sculpting, but it's also about practicing correctly. One way I really recommend practicing is talked a bit about this before in the stream, but is find a sphere and just sculpt a lot on a sphere. Don't try to sculpt anything specifically here, but just try to sculpt a lot and control the brush. Just really the only thing you're trying to do is try to blend things, try to create interesting shapes. It's the only thing you're trying to do. Another thing, which this is also an exercise I talked about before, this is a really, really annoying exercise. You're going to hate me for this one if you do it. If any of my mentees are listening here, you have already gone through this probably. So the exercise is sculpt a full figure where you label every single muscle, every single bone without reference. This is really, really, really difficult. Sculpt a whole naturalistic human figure, a crochet style, which means no skin and no fat. Sculpt this and label everything. You are not going to be able to do this. This is insane. This is really, 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 really difficult. And then once you've done that, spend some time on that, you probably won't get too far. If you get as far as you can, and whenever you get stuck, then you stop. And then you do it again. This time, you do it with reference. And now you're going to see a delta between what you knew before, which was not a whole lot about anatomy, because this is difficult, and what you now know with reference. And you do this over and over again. This is single-handedly the best way I've found to learn anatomy. It is stupidly hardcore. It sucks to do. You feel like garbage doing it because it fundamentally pushes you to your edge every single time of what you know, right? Like that's literally the purpose of this exercise. It is to push you to the edge of your knowledge. And that means that you are by definition out of your comfort zone, which sucks. But the learning you get from this exercise is unparalleled because it means that you truly put down everything you know over and over and over again. And then over and over again, you also self-correct what you know, which means that you are going to improve from an anatomical point of view, a crazy, crazy amount. But it's a rough one to do. You're not going to feel good doing this exercise. It's one of those you're going to feel like you don't know anything. And that's because when it comes to anatomy, most people know far less than they actually think. Because if you're sculpting assisted, right, like you have reference there, you never really get to truly think about what it is you're doing. Not like fully, right? You get to, of course, have a decent understanding of things. But the moment you have to put down everything you know on paper as a quiz back in high school, no aids, you're going to realize what it is you don't know, and it becomes so clear. You can't talk your way out of that one, right? But every single time you do it, you're going to improve. Like this is not an exercise that I can just ace. Like this is an exercise that's difficult for somebody no matter what level they're at, which is why it's so beautiful, because it's like doing pull-ups, right, at the gym or deadlifts. It's not like somebody has just mastered the pull-up, right? Like you do more pull-ups, or do weighted ones, or do them slower, or do them more controlled. You do deadlifts, you lift more. No one is like, yeah, I'm done with them, right? I'm mastered pull-ups. Don't have to do them anymore because I can do all of them, right? It doesn't work like that. It's the same thing with anatomy. Not a single person is going to go, yeah, I know anatomy now. No, you don't know anatomy. You get to a point where you get comfortable with anatomy, where you can use it as a tool, but you never reach a point where you master anatomy. That's literally not possible. You can do this exercise every day for the rest of your life, and every single time you're gonna find something and be like, I'll be darned, I didn't know this thing was here. So yeah, that's easily one of my best drills when it comes to improving things really fast. But then sculpt a lot from references as well in general. I think, at least when you're learning, you should really sculpt nearly entirely with reference. I don't think there's a lot of purpose in sculpting without references. The purpose of sculpting without a reference is a lot more fun, right? It's a lot more fun in the beginning because it's a lot more freedom, but then it stops being fun pretty much right away because you get stuck really fast. But the purpose of no reference is that you can be a bit more creative in a way, at least early on when you're exploring things, you're not locked to anything. So that can be fun to do. But for learning purposes, pretty much every single sculpt you do should have some references. And then you should be using something like Epic Pen here. You can draw over the reference like this. You can draw over your thing. You can see that they match or they do not match. And that's a massive, massive, massive benefit. I often look at my characters from weird angles like below, because you really get to see the curvature of your model, and I really try to make sure the curvature is nice and clean across the whole character. This is something that genuinely makes your sculpt so much more appealing. If you keep looking at the silhouette from so many different angles, you just get to refine to a level where it's going to feel so much more naturalistic. All right, I'm probably going to be continuing the stream for a little bit longer, and then we are going to be stopping it. So whatever questions you guys have, this is the time to get your questions in the chat. And just a reminder that we have a ton of really cool products here. I recommend you check out the Flip Models exclusives. We also just did an update on the layout of Flip Models recently, which is I'm preferring a lot. We killed the banner. The banner is now on the back, and it used to be that the banner only had the creator here, so there was nothing there. It was very like 2019 in a way. So we just updated the whole layout here, which I'm really enjoying. So yeah, check out the Flip Models exclusives here. Tons of really cool products. We also have a lot of amazing reference packs as well that I would love to show you guys, but I cannot because they're too much mature content in them, so I'll probably be banned from YouTube right away, because that's what we have these, the blurry filter, right? Which is super useful for these purposes. One course I recommend is one I did some years ago now. This is still perfectly up to date because this is just core fundamentals. This is Intro to Sculpting. Highly recommend Intro to Sculpting. I cover a lot of stuff that I'm covering in this chat so far, or in this stream, in these streams in general, focusing on character design, focusing on core sculpting techniques, really focusing on how to improve a lot as a sculptor. So I really recommend like the aforementioned anatomy, Intro to Anatomy, like I talked before, or Intro to Sculpting that I mentioned now. A lot of good stuff there. I'm also curious about the update to the ZBrush UI, because I might have to real fast make a lot of tutorials for ZBrush again, because the UI is completely different. But yeah, if you guys have any further questions, I will be happy to answer them. If not, then I shall retire for the evening and leave you guys with this monk. I'll probably continue this guy tomorrow. I like this guy. He is not perfect, but I like him. As I worked as a character artist at Framestore, what courses do you recommend to further strengthen my portfolio as I want to enter this type of film or cinematic companies in the future? I didn't work as a character artist at Framestore. I was interning at Framestore. I worked as a character artist at NPC, rest in peace, and at DNEG, just to set the record straight. But in terms of the courses, I really do recommend, that's fine. I do recommend, depending on what you want to do, right? I recommend Intro to Sculpting, I'll send the link above, as an entry to everything. This is the kind of stuff you need to understand most of these concepts here as a starting point. Then I recommend Intro to Anatomy to really get up to speed with anatomy. These are the two foundational courses that I really recommend that you watch no matter what. This is basically gonna make sure that your sculpting and your anatomical skills are to a solid level. Then I recommend that we do in order to get up to date on the pipeline and such. Like this course here is still a few years old, but it's it covers, let me find it. It covers the workflow. This workflow here is perfectly valid today. So no matter what it is you want to do, this is for intermediate users, yeah. So this course here covers how to go from a basic sculpt, more refined sculpt, to a final sculpt, and it covers UV mapping techniques. It covers how to do high frequency. It covers how to do retopology. This is in Blender. The tool's a bit better now. The focus is on good, clean, industry standard techniques, topology that can be used in Painter, that we can really go in here and we can focus on creating a nice skin shader. There's some hair in here as well, and just focusing on good techniques. You can see here, for instance, the roughness map is dead simple because we're driving this using the displacement map instead. We're focusing on good old school lighting techniques, about just proper methodical work, nothing over engineered, but also everything industry standard. So I really recommend this course for that. So this is definitely one of the good ones. If you want to really go into sculpting as well, for sculpting like really like in-depth sculpting for this, I also recommend this one as well, where we're sculpting Frankenstein's monster, where we go from this to this. This also covers a lot of design techniques. This is also real-time sculpting as well. So this one here is really, I really recommend this one because it's it's just good old school hardcore sculpting, step by step. Everything is shown, everything is narrated, all in this. It's one of those things you just need to know these things as well. do I need to know, do I need to learn Substance Painter and all the industry standard software as soon as I can, or just build my portfolio with Blender and Nomad Sculpt first? It depends what you want to do. If you want to go into the industry as a character sculptor, particularly in film, different for games, right? But particularly for film, I strongly recommend that you learn Maya and that you learn ZBrush. Blender is being used more and more, of course, but in the film industry, Maya is just the standard for that. And that's not changing anytime soon. No one is really using Blender for that. One of the reasons is because it's so ingrained in the pipeline of all the companies. And it's also like if you're working as a character artist, it's not like you're sitting in ZBrush all day. You're going to be doing tons of stuff in Maya. You're going to be publishing things. You're going to be doing props, topology, all that kind of stuff. So you just need to know Maya. In terms of Nomad just isn't there yet, right? Like it's decent, right? Practice in there, but you need ZBrush for industry level character art, particularly for film, because you need to. This is how you export out standard displacement maps as well, like vector displacement maps and just regular displacement maps using multi-map exporter, which is here. So this is like, I would say that if you want to be taken seriously in film, you need to use the same tools. It's not like you can't just build your portfolio and then hope it's going to be fine, because you need to hit the ground running. If you're being given a task at work, which if you get a job, you might be hired quite soon. You need to just be like, oh, cool, yeah, I can make the model in Maya and I can start sculpting in ZBrush. You can't be like, can I have Nomad, please, or can I have Blender, because they might not have those tools. So I strongly recommend that you focus on these tools. I think you would have a very hard time being taken seriously, to be honest, if you were to be coming to a job interview only using these tools. It's not about what can get the job done. It's about what tools are the studios using, and you simply have to adapt to that. No studio is ever going to be adapting to your personal workflows unless they're a very, very small studio and you come in there with quite a lot of experience. So learn the industry standard tools, learn the tools that companies are using. It's not about good or bad. It's about what's actually being used on a day-to-day basis. Give me advice. Should I sculpt in pose or not? I recommend that you sculpt in an A pose. So the character is standing with their arms out. Like so. I don't think you should be sculpting in an actual pose where the character is posed. That's just too difficult. And I know for any kind of, like, it's good for learning, right? It's fantastic for learning purposes, but particularly for something that's being rigged, you want the character to be as neutral as possible. This is why the A pose is so good as well compared to something like the T pose, because the T pose really messes up the shoulders. So yeah, sculpt as neutral as you can. But yeah, guys, that's it for today's stream. Check out some of these courses if you're interested in that. Here is the link to the Flip Normals exclusive store, but the sale is on over 50,000 products at this point here. So we have tons of really, really good stuff. So yeah, check out this link as well for all the products that are on sale. You can get the the brush kit for 50 cents, which is pretty darn cheap at this point. So yeah, check out our store. Check out stuff that's that can help you improve as an artist, and or don't. We have tons of stuff on YouTube as well. If you're interested as well in more of these streams, we've done a fair few of these. This is stream number 5 that we've done in conjunction with Black Friday / Cyber Monday. So I have tons of these streams as well on YouTube, also from the previous year. So there is plenty of content. These streams are all very similar to this stream here in terms of, like, I'm just taking questions, I'm sculpting. So, but all focus on something a bit different. So yeah, cool guys. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll probably see you guys tomorrow.